The creepiest part is never a killer holding a knife, but everyone already making excuses for him. Like it couldn't be him. Late night on October 17, 1995. I got kicked awake. A solid hit right in my lower back, hurt so bad I curled up. A flashlight beam right in my face. All white and blurry. Couldn't see a thing. Get up. Police. My first reaction wasn't fear. It was a long sigh of relief. Finally here. I got dragged out to the yard barefoot. The concrete was freezing cold under my feet. Someone twisted my hands behind my back. Click, the cuffs went on. The yard was bright as day. A bunch of big searchlights lit up every corner. The iron gate had been busted open. Dozens of cops and people in white coats were flooding in. 22 guard dogs were going crazy barking. The cages banged and rattled. The sound of dogs scratching the ground was like thunder. Someone yelled, "Where's Cheng?" Nobody answered. A few minutes passed. A voice came from the second floor. "Got it." He went over the back wall. I crouched in the corner. Heard a middle-aged man's voice. Calm and slow. What he said I'll never forget for my whole life. He said, "Dig first." Dig where? That empty spot next to the dog kennel. I lived on the edge of that spot for 3 years. I knew the dirt there was looser than anywhere else in the yard. It dried faster after rain. I knew the grass on top grew extra thick in spring. So green it looked black. Because what was underneath rotted into fertilizer. I crouched there. My whole body started shaking. Not from the cold. Because I knew they were about to dig up 6 dead people's bones. 2 guys walked over with shovels. The first scoop went in. The dirt was soft like bean curd. In less than a minute, someone shouted, "Zot something." I craned my neck to see. A guy bent down and picked something out of the hole. White color. Long and narrow. One end was a smooth cut. I had no clue what that was back then. Then I heard the coroner say, "Femur." Later I found out, that's the bone from a person's thigh. My mouth started getting sour. The second pit was 3 feet away. Again less than 10 minutes. They called out again. This time they dug up a shoe. A woman's shoe. Black. Medium heel. Dried mud on the shoe surface. I stared at that shoe. A sudden image flashed through my mind. That round-faced female cadre. She wore a pair of black leather shoes. Once she came to the yard. It was raining. Her shoes got muddy. She stomped her feet at the door. I gave her a rag to wipe them. She laughed and said, "Thanks, Uncle Zhang." That shoe was bagged in a clear plastic bag. And tagged. My hands started shaking. The third pit moved a few steps east, near the corner of the doghouse. This time they dug deeper. Almost a meter deep before finding something. First a piece of clothing. A gray-blue down jacket. Mostly rotten. Exposing blackened cotton inside. When I saw that jacket, my legs went weak. That girl who handed me an apple. The first time she came to the yard, she was wearing that gray-blue down jacket, with a pink little flower embroidered on the left chest. I remember it clearly. The down jacket was pulled out of the pit. Underneath was a pile of bones. Small bones. Broken bones. And a button. Plastic. Yellow. I recognized that button. The round-faced female cadre's coat had that kind of button. My stomach churned. I tried to swallow it back down. Couldn't hold it. Coughed up some sour liquid. The fourth pit was right in front of the doghouse. This time I recognized what was dug up right away. A belt. A flower carved on the brass buckle. It was Zhang Yong's. That young guy. In a dark blue jacket. Driving a white van. He said the buckle was a gift from his girlfriend. Says he'll go back and marry her after this job. The job he meant was the one with Cheng Huang. His belt is here. But the guy's long gone. The fifth pit was in the northeast corner of the yard. Near the house I was staying in. Had the least stuff in it. Just a few bone fragments and a bit of hair. The hair was long. Black. And curly. I don't know whose hair it was. But it reminded me of someone. Director Ali. His hair is gray. Not black. So this was a woman's. The sixth pit was at the far edge. Right next to the wall. Dug really deep. And found nothing. The forensic guy paced around a bit. Then had them dig another half-meter down. The shovel hit something hard. Dug it out and saw. It was a piece of skull. Broken. Not complete. But you could tell it was human. Pit 6. 6 people. The forensic guy squatting on the ground counting. Mumbling about some numbers and labels. I didn't get it. I just saw things being put into clear bags one after another. Bones. Bits of clothes. Shoes. Buttons. Hair clips. Belts. Then someone dug around in the dirt from pit 3. Picked up a small dark thing. Half an apple core. All dried out. Shriveled up. And black. But you could still see bite marks. I stared at that apple core. My knees went weak. and I dropped to the ground. That girl. She took a bite of an apple, and stood at the yard gate waiting for Chung Peng. Later the apple core fell on the ground. I thought a dog took it. Turns out it sank into the dirt. She was already dead that day. 2 cops had me by the arms, shoved me into a cop car. The car smelled like smoke, the heater blowing hot air on my face. We got to the station. They sat me on a bench in the hallway. Handcuffs off. But nobody talked to me. People walking back and forth in the hall. The phone kept ringing. I curled up on the bench, head down. After who knows how long, footsteps came from the other end of the hall. 3 guys pushing one guy in. Cheng Peng. He kept his head down, hair all messy, his leather jacket covered in dirt. But he still walked with his chin up, just like always. When he passed in front of me, he paused for a second. He saw me. He froze for a moment. Then the corner of his mouth turned up, and he smiled. That smile was exactly the same as always. A gentleman's smile. A big boss's smile. Like he wasn't just caught as a killer from the dog pound. Like he was still that guy handing me a cigarette in the yard. I didn't look at him. I turned my head away. I heard the iron door slam shut. The hall went quiet. A young cop came over, and handed me a cup of water. "You are Zhang Lao-san." I nodded. "Let's take a statement. Tell us everything you know." I held the cup. My hand kept shaking. Water splashed out. Burned me and I flinched. "I don't know anything," I said. The young cop gave me a look. "You lived with him for 3 years. And you really had no clue." I stayed quiet. He let out a sigh. "People like you. I've seen plenty. You're not bad. Just scared." He scribbled a few words in his notebook. I crouched in the hallway, and stayed there till dawn. When they took my statement, the cop asked me, "How'd you get to that yard?" So I started from the beginning. Winter of '92. At the labor market in South Xi'an. I'd been hanging around for a month and a half. No luck finding work. Only had about $10 left in my pocket. Sleeping nights at the train station waiting room. A woman came up to me, wearing a wool coat, with permed hair. She said some boss needed someone to watch the yard and feed the dogs. $150 a month. $150 man. Back then a regular worker only made $300 to $500. I jumped up right away and said, "I'm your guy." He took me to a black Santana, left the city and turned onto a dirt road. Drove for nearly 40 minutes. I saw a gray brick yard in the distance. The wall was over 6 feet tall, with barbed wire on top. The iron gate swung open. A big wolfdog burst out first, almost up to my waist. Its pale yellow eyes locked on me. Didn't bark. "Who's he? Get back." Cheng Peng walked out from behind the dog. "Come out." He's wearing a brown leather jacket. Black leather shoes all shiny. Square face. Clean shaven. Holding a pack of Chinese smokes. He glanced at me, and smiled. "A guy from Shanxi. Good. Solid." He patted my shoulder. His palm was thick and strong. "You'll stay in the east room from now on. Help me feed the dogs. Sweep the yard. And don't go near the west side at night." Back then I thought, this boss ain't bad. Later one time I had a fever. Was burning up all confused. He had someone bring meds from the city. Even personally brought me a bowl of noodles. "Lao-san. Eat it while it's hot." That bowl of noodles was chicken broth, with a poached egg on top. Eating those noodles, I almost teared up. I thought to myself, even my own son never treated me this good. Later when thinking back on that bowl of noodles, I got chills all over. A guy who chops off people's hands and feet could casually make me a meal like that. But slowly I came to find out, he wasn't your average guy. How was I supposed to know? The bed I was lying on was less than 30 yards from the first burial site. Cheng Peng's dad was a department head at the provincial level. Back in our day, that was like a god as far as we were concerned. He served in the army, got reassigned, joined the system, then went private. Those folks who came to the yard, they bowed and scraped to him. Not because he had skills, but because of his dad. He didn't talk much. One time he had a drinking party. I was pouring tea nearby. A fat guy clinked glasses with him, and said, "Boss Cheng, is your old man still pulling strings?" Cheng Peng just smirked. "He's retired." But he didn't talk much. Fatty quickly nodded. Another time, a tall skinny guy showed up. Looked like his old classmate. They both got wasted. The tall skinny guy let it slip. "You beat up Teacher Lee back then. Almost got expelled. If it wasn't for your dad." Cheng Peng just laughed. That was all in the past. I heard bits and pieces later. He really did beat the teacher. Punched and kicked. Teacher was in the hospital for 2 weeks. His dad paid up, and swept it under the rug. Another time, he stabbed someone. Got 3 years in juvie, but was out in 6 months. After getting out, his dad even hooked him up with a job. I heard enough of that. And one thing stuck in my head. This guy never feared trouble since he was a kid. 'Cause he knew. If shit went down, someone would cover for him. First 2 months were all good. Cheng Peng didn't come around much. But when he did, he was super sweet to the dogs. Whiskers. Black Panther. Big Yellow. He'd hand feed them chunks of meat. Petting their heads while feeding. He was also amazing at training them. Just tap a thin iron rod, and all 22 dogs shut up at once. The first night that made my stomach drop was early spring of '93. It snowed hard that day. I woke up in the middle of the night to dogs barking. Not just any barking, like they'd gone crazy. 22 dogs barking and scratching the ground like mad. The whole yard was shaking. I peeked through the crack in the door barefoot. The dogs were on the other side under a bright light. Cheng Peng wore a dark apron. Rubber gloves on. In front of him a big iron pot, fire burning underneath. Something boiling inside. Steaming hot. He stirred it with a long iron rod. Next morning I went to clean the kennel. The dog bowls were full of big chunks of meat. Some pieces still had white tendons on them. I picked up a bone. It was big. Thicker than a chicken bone. Thinner than a sheep bone. The cross-section was smooth, like it had been sawed by something. I stared at that bone. And thought to myself, what is this? Another voice said, that's meat rich folks eat. What do you know about it? I tossed the bone away. But I couldn't get that pot out of my head. In April of 1993, 2 cops showed up. They asked what my boss's name was, then asked about a young guy named Zhang, who was in agricultural trade. If he'd been around before New Year's. I said no. After they left, I remembered something. A month before New Year's, I found a little black square on a pile of dirt by the dog kennel. It had a screen. Later I learned it was called a display pager. Worth over $1,000. I handed it to Cheng Peng. He glanced at it and stuck it in his pocket. Without saying a word. If it was his, how'd it end up on that dirt pile? And that dirt had been freshly turned that morning. What doghouse fixer would dig a hole waist deep? That young guy Zhang never came back. I kept thinking. A guy like him had everything. Money. Connections. Women. Why would he need to do it? I made up excuses for him. How could a department head's son kill someone? How could someone who was in a movie kill someone? How could someone with cash and girls kill someone? I convinced myself. But the thorn inside wouldn't go away. Every time Cheng Peng came late at night, the pickup's bed was covered with a tarp. Once he drove off and the tarp was flat. Next time he came it was bulging again. I thought it over and over. And figured I couldn't keep faking it. That summer of 1993, I spent $2 to have the old letter writer on South Street draft an anonymous note. What I dictated was, Cheng Peng runs a dog yard 3 miles east of Lifu village. He boils big pots of meat every night. Bones buried next to the kennels. I had a bad feeling about it. But I didn't dare write Cheng Peng's name. Didn't dare say murder. I slipped the note into the police station's door crack. Waited 10 days. Nothing happened. On the 11th day, Cheng Peng had dinner with someone. I heard a customer saying, Boss Cheng, your dad had dinner with Chief Lee from the Public Security Bureau yesterday. Cheng Peng replied, yeah. Old school buddies. I don't know if that dinner had anything to do with my note. But that night, Cheng Peng glanced at me while feeding the dogs. Neither warm nor cold. Then he said, Number 3. I'll hold on to this month's pay for you. Hand it all at the end of the year. The next day, my ID was gone too. He said he'd apply for a temporary residence permit for me. Only a few bucks left in my pocket. Stuck there. Spring of 1994. An old man showed up outside the yard. Hen accent. In his 60s. Last name Liu. He built a shack by the road to collect scrap. After he came, I noticed he'd stare through the yard wall every night. Whenever Cheng Peng's pickup truck came, he'd stand in the shadows. One night I saw him digging a hole by the shack to bury something. Next day I dug it up. A doll. Stuck with needles. Wrapped with a note. The note had Cheng Peng's name on it. That freaked me out. This guy had beef with Cheng Peng. I tried to chat him up. Passed him a cigarette. Old pal. Do you know the owner of this yard? He paused while lighting up. I know him. But his hands were shaking. Then old man Liu disappeared. The shack was still there. But he was gone. Later on, after the cops dug up the yard, so I heard something. Old man Liu's son worked for Cheng Peng a few years back. And just vanished. Old man Liu looked for years. Found this courtyard. Been keeping an eye on it the whole time. He's tougher than me. At least he had the guts to watch. As for where he ended up, nobody knows. His name is Xiao Zhou. Cheng Peng calls him Xiao Zhou. He came to the yard 3 times. First time was fall of 1994. Early 20s. Ponytail. Wearing a gray-blue down jacket. With a little pink flower sewn on the left chest. Baby face. Dimples when he smiled. Cheng Peng wasn't around. So he just waited at the door. I brought him a chair. He said thanks uncle. Then pulled an apple out of his pocket and handed it to me. Uncle, have one. I took a bite of that red apple. Real sweet. He waited over an hour. Didn't meet him. Before leaving he said, Uncle, I'll come back another time. Tell Cheng Peng for me. Say Xiao Zhou stopped by. Second time was 2 weeks later. Cheng Peng was there. They hung out in the small building a bit. He came out at dusk. Eyes all red. Like he'd been crying. Third time was winter. Light snow falling. Cheng Peng was out again. He stood at the door head down. Both hands clutching the hem of his coat. He brewed some good liquor. Then he took off. Next morning, I saw a half-eaten apple core on the ground by the doghouse. No one had come through the yard the day before. Except him. Cheng Peng was there that night. After that he never showed again. Spring of 1995. Cops came around with a photo asking about him. The photo was of a young woman. Ponytail. Dimples. I saw it from a distance. My hands started shaking. But I didn't walk over. I figured, she's just some young gal. Probably went out of town. What am I even thinking? I made up another excuse for Cheng Peng. Former army female cadre. Cheng Peng called her sister Wang. She was 2 years older than him. Had a husband and kid. But she still kept showing up at the yard every few days. She was polite to me. Once she brought me a box of pastries. To the countryside. He said, Uncle Zhang. Give it a try. He often wore a beige coat in winter. Buttons were yellow. Plastic. One time it rained. His coat got muddy when he came in. I handed him a rag. He smiled and said thanks. Then he didn't show for a while. After that, Cheng Peng was on the phone. I heard him say about Sister Wang. Keep an eye on her for me. If she causes trouble, tell her stirring things up won't do her any good. He hung up, muttering to himself, women are such a hassle. Winter of 1994. One night Cheng Peng's pickup showed up again. Next morning the dirt by the doghouse was turned over a bit. Patted smooth and flat. A few days later, I found a button in the corner of the yard. Yellow. Plastic. Exactly like the ones on Sister Wang's coat. I held that button for a long time. Walked outside the yard and tossed it into the ditch. This guy Balian I never met. Cheng Peng let it slip himself. One time he got too drunk. I helped him upstairs. He kept mumbling about that jerk 8 face. Back then in the reform camp he stomped on my face. And made me lick his shoe soles. Look at him now. No telling which pile of dirt he's in. I played like I didn't hear a thing. Later I found out 8 face was his first kill. After he got out he hunted for 3 years. Found him. Finished him off. Killing was like cracking open a cold soda. That's what he said later in the interrogation room. When I heard that, I felt a chill run down my spine. Section Chief Li was Cheng Peng's old boss. Retired. One time he came to visit Cheng Peng. Cheng Peng set up a table of booze in the yard. Chief Li's hair was all gray. He spoke slow and easy. He handed me a cigarette. Said rough work buddy. I took the cigarette. Just nodded. Chief Li came by again later. His face was all red when he left. Like they'd had a fight. Then I heard Chief Li got sick and was in the hospital. Then I heard he died. The paper said it was a brain bleed. Cheng Peng went to his memorial service. Came back and told me Chief Li was always too hot-headed. Then later, cops dug up crushed bones and long hair from the 5th hole. The coroner said it was an older man. I can't be sure who that was. But I remember that cigarette Chief Li handed me. The last one in the fall of 95. He was a young guy. Under 30. Wearing a blue jacket. Driving a white van. He showed up yelling Cheng Peng's name. Real familiar. Like an old school buddy. Cheng Peng was in a great mood that day. Told me to go to town and order a feast. Even opened a bottle of Mao Tai. The two of them drank all afternoon in the little building. I was squatting in the flat house eating a bun. Heard their voices going up and down. The young guy's voice got a bit impatient. Like he was pushing for something. Cheng Peng's voice dropped lower and lower. By dusk. The young guy said he had to go. Cheng Peng said don't drive after drinking. The kid didn't listen. He still started the car. Cheng Peng stood at the door and yelled. Then take it easy. Come back another day. As he was shouting that, the smile on his face hadn't faded yet. Just like always. That night Cheng Peng didn't leave. I got up to pee in the middle of the night. I saw the bed of his pickup truck was all lumpy and bulging. The shape was off. I was squatting in the bathroom. Heard some noise from the dog kennels again. Dogs barking. Dragging of iron pots. Thumping sounds. Then this heavy dull thing hitting something hard over and over. 1 hit. 2 hits. 3 hits then a pause. A messy clatter like something being dumped. Then the dogs barked. All 22 dogs howling together. Not angry. It was excitement. That hungry, greedy kind of barking, like they'd eat a person up. I hugged my knees and squatted on the bathroom floor. Stayed there till dawn. When I came out, my legs were totally numb. The dog pen was empty. Not even a bone fragment left. Just a few dark red splatters along the edge of the stone trough. Next to the kennel were 2 deep tire tracks, with half-dried water stains inside them, that reddish tint from being washed. I grabbed the broom, swept the tire tracks first, then wiped off the red spots on the trough. Then I squatted under the faucet and washed my hands for ages. What was I washing away? I was washing away a thought. What I heard last night. Was it a person's voice? I told myself no. It had to be dogs fighting. Dogs chewing on pig bones. I had to believe that, because if I believed anything else, I'd be an accomplice. If I believed anything else, I'd be no different from those 22 animals in the yard. September 1995. The city paper ran a story. Dismembered body found in the eastern suburbs. The killer had been caught. It was a taxi driver. Killed 2 people. After I read it, I finally felt a weight lift off my shoulders. So the murder was someone else's doing. Turned out those bones in Cheng Peng's yard weren't human. I was just overthinking it. I went out and grabbed a bottle of liquor, knocked back half of it by myself. I told myself, Zhang Lao-san, you dumb jerk. What were you thinking about that poor boss? His dad's a department head. He's been in movies. He can train dogs. And he can kill. That whole week. I worked like I had real energy. A few days later, the delivery driver old Zhao came by. I brought up that case in the eastern suburbs. I said they caught the killer. Old Zhao said, yeah, no kidding. A few more days passed. Old Zhao showed up again, talking while unloading the truck. Hey, Lao-san. Did you hear? That case in the eastern suburbs. Word is they got the wrong guy. The real culprit is still out there. The one they caught is just a scapegoat. It was in the papers. I was mixing dog food. Almost dropped the spoon in my hand. After old Zhao left, I squatted in the yard and smoked a few cigarettes. If the taxi driver wasn't the real killer, then where's the real one? Is it standing right in front of me this whole time? Every day telling me, Lao-san, did you feed the dogs? That night I couldn't sleep again. Later I finally noticed, there were always a few bags of quicklime piled in the corner. Every time Cheng Peng finished with something, he'd spread a thick layer over the kennels. That stuff kills the smell, and dries out the dirt fast. For years I never knew what the lime was for, but now it all made sense. No wonder nobody ever smelled anything weird. Early October of 1995, I decided to make a run for it. But Cheng Peng had my ID. And he was holding my pay. I only had a few bucks in my pocket. One time when Cheng Peng wasn't around, I tried climbing over the wall. That wall was over 6 feet tall. I stacked a few bricks to stand on. Got halfway up. Slipped and fell. My left ankle smacked into the bricks. Hurt so bad I sat on the ground for ages. I sat in the corner, staring at that wall. Couldn't even climb over a wall. What kind of man am I? I thought about asking for help. One day old Zhao the delivery guy came by. I whispered to him, Old Zhao, can you pass a message to my son for me? Tell him to come get me. Old Zhao said sure thing. A few days later he came and told me, Lao-san, I had someone deliver the message. Your son said he's busy. Told you to work hard. I only found out later. Old Zhao never passed on the message. He was scared of causing trouble. I tried slipping notes to visitors in the yard. One time Cheng Peng had a bunch of people over for dinner. I spotted a friendly-looking guy, slipped a note into his coat pocket quietly. The note read, I'm the guard at the dog yard. The boss might have killed someone. Please call the cops for me. The next day, Cheng Peng said coldly, Lao-san, don't slip stuff to guests anymore. He knew everything. The note ended up in his hands. After that I never dared again. On the afternoon of October 17, 1995, Cheng Peng showed up. He didn't come inside. Straight. Went to the kennel. He played with Tiger for a bit. Crouched down holding Tiger's head. Pressing his face against the dog's ear. Mumbling something under his breath. Watching from a distance. He's nicer to dogs than people. He got up when he was done. Walked over to me. Handed me a cigarette. Lao-san. How many years you been working for me now? 3 years. Mr. Cheng. 3 years. He repeated it. Flicked the lighter. Leaned in close. Bowed his head to light it. The flame lit up his face for a second. Leather jacket. White shirt. Clean shaven. He stood there. Like a big shot boss. Like a classy guy. No way he looked like a killer. But on his apron there was a black spot. Something already dried. I found out later. That was blood. Human blood. Hit the sack early tonight. Feed the dogs well. He patted my shoulder. turned and walked upstairs. I stood in the yard watching his back. I wanted to call out to him. I wanted to say, "Mr. Cheng, I know everything." But I didn't say a thing. That night, I gave them double the meat. The dogs ate like crazy. I crouched outside the kennel, watching them fight over food. 22 wolf dogs. Teeth shining white. Tongues purple red. The sound of them chewing bones crunch crunch. Like munching on peanuts. Then it hit me. The flower on Zhang Yong's belt buckle was a rose. He said his girlfriend loved roses. Remembered. The apple that girl handed me was a red Fuji. I took a bite. It was super sweet. And then remembered more. The snack Sister Wang gave me was filled with red bean paste inside. Thinking back, the cigarette section Chief Li handed me was a Hong Ta Shan. He said, "Man, you must be tired." I was squatting outside the dog kennel. It got dark, and I still hadn't moved. What I didn't know was, that very night, the cops already had a warrant out for Chen Peng. They were on their way. Chen Peng had been on the run for 2 months. In December of 1995, he was caught in a small county in a neighboring province. I heard he was hiding out in a tiny lumber yard. The boss gave him odd jobs to do. One day the boss handed him a cigarette, the kind that cost $2.50 a pack. He took a drag, and the disgust on his face couldn't be hidden no matter what. Just that one expression made the boss get suspicious. A guy on the run hiding in some small county took a puff of a cheap cigarette. The disgust on his face was that deep in his bones from birth, kinda privilege. Couldn't even hide it on the run. Later he confessed in the interrogation room. The reporter asked him what it felt like to kill someone. He said, "Every time I kill someone, I feel really good inside. Like downing a cold Coke on a hot summer day." A cold Coke. I've had cold Coke before. 50 cents a bottle. I always thought that was the best thing in the world. Later, every time I saw a Coke ad on TV, I'd switch the channel. At the end of 1995, Chen Peng was executed. Those 22 wolf dogs that had eaten human flesh were all put down too. Not a single one left. The yard was later flattened, and a new factory was built. But I heard nobody dared go near that place at night. Not because of ghosts, but because of that smell. That smell of decayed bones seeping into the soil. It comes back up every time it rains. Even 20 years later it still hasn't faded. I later heard, Chen Peng's dad still got his high official pension after retirement. Nobody ever held those who helped cover things up accountable until he died. And nobody ever stepped up and said I was wrong. I live in the village back home now. Grow a few acres of crops. Keep 2 mangy dogs to guard the place. I don't get close to them. And I don't hit them either. Just give them some food. And let them live. Sometimes I wonder, they're living their lives. And I'm living mine. What's the difference between us? They got no clue what they're eating. But I know I'm in it for 3 years. I raised 2 dogs. Who's more messed up, me or the dogs? Sometimes I wake up from nightmares in the middle of the night. I sit up and light a cigarette. My wife asks me what's wrong. I say nothing. Just had a dream. She asks what dream. I say I don't remember. Honestly, there's no way I'd forget. It's always the same picture. I'm in that yard. 22 dogs surrounding me. Chewing on things. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I try to run, but all I step on is broken bones. Sometimes in the dream I look down. Those bones piece together into a face. Not Chen Peng's face. It's mine. This case went down over 20 years ago. My granddaughter just started college this year. She's studying law. She came home on break and asked me, "Grandpa, what do the worst people look like?" I thought for a long time, and told her, the worst people aren't the ones with evil written on their faces. The worst ones are the ones nobody thinks are bad. Even they don't think they're bad. But their hands are covered in 6 people's blood. And they don't even flinch. I told her again, the scariest thing ain't a killer holding a knife. It's when everyone, including me, already makes excuses for why it can't be them. I still can't forgive myself to this day. Because in those 3 years, I smelled the blood, heard the crunch of bones, touched things that shouldn't be in the ground. But I did nothing. I just fed the dogs on time every day.